Monday afternoon to 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a good weekend. Well, Amari Cooper, holdout continues. Here's Jordan Schultz, NFL reporter, on what he's heard with the Amari Cooper holdout. This from The Herd with Colin Cowherd.
He's a great player. He's 29 years old. He's coming off his best season as a pro, almost 1,300 yards. He is productive. And I actually spoke with someone in that organization after Amari didn't show up. And basically the comment I got was, Amari Cooper is what we want the Cleveland Browns to be about. He's professional, he's consistent, and he's dominant when he's on the field. So I think he will ultimately get paid. The number really has to be, I think, over 25. It makes sense to me. And when you talk about him getting 20 next year, he is significantly underpaid going into 2024.
With that, let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Tim, I would figure they figure a way out, and you and I were talking before the show. Happy 30th birthday to Amari Cooper today.
Yeah, I've talked before about that, dreaded 30-year-old number with receivers that it seems like after 30 guys kind of fall off. And I said before, Amari Cooper doesn't feel like the kind of receiver who's going to fall off just because he's 30 years old, because his game isn't simply predicated on speed and vertical leaping ability. His game is based on smarts and quickness, and I think that stuff is stuff that can extend a career. When you look at Amari Cooper's numbers since coming to Cleveland, 2,400 yards, 2,410 yards exactly, 14 touchdowns, in 32 games with the Browns. I mean, like Jordan said, talking to someone on the Browns, I mean, when he mentioned Cooper is pretty much everything he wants the Browns to be. And it seems like based on that, it just kind of comes down to finding the right number, whether it's, 24 million, 25 million. And we've seen how the receiver market has blown up in the last couple of years. The only thing is, I feel like because he's 30, I don't know if I would go more than 3 years with Amari Cooper, just because you want to make sure that, as much as he wants to get paid and he doesn't have any guaranteed money left on his contract, reading what Mary Kay Cabot wrote last week about the whole situation, it could certainly make sense where they get a deal done where, it's just another 2-3 years, maybe maximum again, because he's already 30, but he gets that number that he's looking for and gets most of it guaranteed. So it's something that I feel like should get worked out, because Cooper has been just what the Browns were looking for at receiver.
So along those lines, Brandon Aiyuk, contract year for the 49ers, and he's all over social media dictating that the 49ers don't want him. So those negotiations aren't going well. This is from NFL notifications. They say they are hearing a rumor that Cooper for Brandon Aiyuk may be an option for the Browns and Niners. Browns want to get younger at wide receiver. 49ers will only keep one of Samuel or Aiyuk, and they are also thrilled with Ricky Pearsall, the Florida product that they took in the first round. Now, along those lines, Aiyuk has been a really good wide receiver. Take a look at his production. 1,342 yards, 7 touchdowns last year, 1,015 yards, 8 touchdowns the year before, 800 yards in his second year in the league, almost 750 in his first year in the league. So he turned 26 in March. So he's 4 years younger, roughly, than Amari Cooper. I certainly I would understand if the Browns wanted to do that and make that trade. I don't know if that adds up from the 49ers perspective.
Yeah, unless they're looking for that runway to Ricky Pearsall, because again, Amari Cooper is a guy that, I still think he has a couple of years left of high level play, again, because those smarts should only continue to improve as he continues on his career. With Brandon Aiyuk, I don't know if he's necessarily better than Amari Cooper, but what we know is he's ascending, and he's obviously got 4 years. He's got 4 years. He's 4 years younger than Amari Cooper. Plus, his last season, you just showed the numbers, 1,342 yards. That's better than Amari Cooper's season high for yards in a season. So right there, you see Brandon Aiyuk, certainly still might have runway to be even better. I just think he may be underrated, because in San Francisco, there's so many big names out there. You got Deebo Samuel, you got Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Brock Purdy. So many big names out there that maybe Brandon Aiyuk gets overshadowed, and maybe that's why there's not as much buzz about him. But when you consider the Niners have to pay Deebo Samuel pretty soon, they already have this big decision on Brandon Aiyuk. I don't know if it would necessarily happen. It feels unlikely because you rarely ever see this star player for star player swap. And I feel like because Ayuk's younger, he would have extra value, and the Browns might have to give up something else to potentially do that if that was something they wanted to do. I don't know. Again, I don't know if it happened. It is kind of fun to think about, especially because we know how much the Browns value youth.
So this is from the Bleach Report, ranking the 10 worst contracts in the NFL ahead of the 2024 season. Number 1, shock, shock, shock. They say Deshaun Watson. Cleveland went 5-1 in his starts in 2023, so there's optimism for success this season and beyond. Entering his age 29 season, Watson is squarely in traditional late prime years too. I wouldn't. If he slides, however, his contract without taking on significant money will almost be impossible. Number 4, they say Jerry Jeudy. We'll come back to Watson in a minute. In short, Jeudy has had better develop into a starter, although the fifth-year receiver flashed some encouraging signs in Denver, maxed out at 972 yards in 2022. Jeudy has intriguing upside, yet the Browns already heavily invested in him. They had Russell Watson 2 and Derek Carr 3 as the top 4 worst contracts. Watson's been hurt. I mean, he hasn't been able to play, so the contract doesn't look great. If he goes out and plays like he's capable of playing, we'll show you in a minute, that contract's going to end up being a bargain. I have no issue whatsoever with the contract with Jeudy at this point. I think they're crazy. The Russell Wilson contract's a problem because he's older. Watson is 29, and they haven't mentioned the 40-year-old Aaron Wilson, what the Jets are paying him. So, again, late prime years, not for a quarterback. I would disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I've already made my thoughts clear on Aaron Rodgers. And with Russell Wilson, I mean, you consider how much Denver paid to move on from him. That kind of says a lot there. But with Deshaun Watson, we'll start with him. I mean, even just looking at his game-by-game numbers, he only played he's played a grand total of 11 and a quarter games since January 3rd of 2021. And that's out of a potential 51 games. And if you want to include the playoff game, the Browns were in 52. So we're not even talking, we're barely talking 20% of the games out there. And if you want to talk about poor performances, his return game against Houston was not good. The Monday night game against the Steelers week 2 last season, that was not a good one. When he had those fumbles, the pick six, the couple face mask penalties, yeah, it wasn't good. But outside of that and outside of the game in Indianapolis, which he was clearly injured, he was clearly not himself. I mean, anybody watching that game could see that. I thought Deshaun Watson played pretty well. His mistake against the Ravens came on just an amazing play by Kyle Hamilton. I think we're forgetting that Kyle Hamilton is one of the best safeties in football, and he made an otherworldly play to get that pick six to start the game. And then Deshaun Watson, on a bad shoulder, on a high ankle sprain, had that perfect second half to lead them to win. I think what it comes down to with Deshaun Watson, I've said a lot of times, can he be on the field? Can he play 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games in a row? And when he does, I think that's when you start to see him be more consistent, start to stack performances together. And I think when that happens, it's not like Deshaun Watson forgot how to play football. It's still there. We've seen glimpses of it. It just comes down to consistency. And I think that comes down to more reps. And then with Jerry Jeudy, we literally just talked about Russell Wilson and how that was a bad contract, how the Broncos had to pay to get out of it. And Jerry Jeudy had his 2 best seasons, his best and third best season the last 2 years when Russell Wilson was his quarterback. And yeah, he's getting paid about $19 million and change, but that feels like the going rate right now for a lower end number 2 receiver, because receivers are getting into the 20s and the 30s and millions of dollars per year. So it's essentially it's essentially a gamble on Jerry Jeudy. I get that, because you're still waiting to see him have a 1,000-yard season, but certainly in Cleveland with Deshaun Watson, who'd be the most talented quarterback he's played for, at least at this stage of his career, with a creative offensive mind and Kevin Stefanski, you add in Ken Dorsey, it certainly feels like a chance for Jerry Jeudy to blossom and really show the kind of player he was drafted to be coming out of Alabama.
So I mentioned, the contract with Watson. These are the highest paid quarterbacks. Average per year is what it is based on. Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow now making $55 million. Jared Goff, 53. Justin Herbert, 52.5. Lamar Jackson, 52. Jalen Hurts, 51. Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, and Patrick Mahomes, $46 million. How is it that Kyler Murray isn't in the boy he's overpaid conversation or a really bad contract conversation? He just hadn't lived up to be. I mean, you could argue he's been a bigger bust as the top overall pick than Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, I mean, at least Baker Mayfield's got a playoff win to his credit, and I will admit, I think Baker has had a better situation in Cleveland before he was let go than what Kyler had in Arizona. But even looking at that list, I see the third guy on that list, $46 million, Patrick Mahomes. How much do you want to bet he should be making 70, $80 million? I mean, you could pay that guy $100 million a year, and I think that'd be great value for Patrick Mahomes, because right now he's arguably the best quarterback outside of Tom Brady in NFL history right now. I'm not afraid to say it because he's just been that special. And when you look at that list of quarterbacks, obviously Trevor Lawrence being the top, that's just, the quarterback market continuing to explode the way it has. And with Lamar Jackson, $52 million, I think that's good value as long as he continues to develop as a passer, which we saw him struggle with that against Kansas City in the conference championship game, but still an extremely good player. But with Deshaun Watson at $46 million, I think it just comes down to being on the field. And when he's out there, I think he gives you more at his best than Kyler Murray can. We saw Kyler Murray play well when he came back at the end of last season. The Browns were kind of lucky they didn't have to face him. Otherwise, that would have been a much tougher game than the one they had against Plain Tune. But yeah, I think for $46 million, I would easily take Deshaun Watson right now over Kyler Murray.
The other one is Jared Goff at $53 million. The Rams gave him away, and then he went and they found a way to make him successful in Detroit.
That's the power of Ben Johnson right there, and the talent that Brad Holmes brought in with the Rams. I mean, you look at that team, it is so incredibly loaded with talent, pretty much across the board on offense, on defense. And Jared Goff, all he really has to do is kind of play point guard on that team. And good for Jared Goff to kind of get that money. And he's cashed in on a once in a lifetime situation where, like you said, the Rams gave him away from Matthew Stafford, won a Super Bowl. And here Goff is being the quarterback of the Lions, who you could argue are as talented a team in football as any, with the best drafter in football right now in Brad Holmes. So maybe I don't know if he's as good as $52 million right now. If I'm Detroit, I'm still kind of in the back of my mind, at least considering a long-term developmental prospect. But I think for what the Lions need right now, Jared Goff is just enough. Obviously, that second half, though, in San Francisco in that NFC Championship game, that would give me a little pause at that dollar value.
All right, before we go to break, NFL announced today, Hard Knocks in season will be with the AFC North. So all of the Browns divisions, the Ravens, Bengals, as well as the Steelers and the Browns. Hard Knocks in season. It premieres December 3rd. Tim, I had when we were talking, I said, well, that explains why the AFC North was backloaded with all of the in division games. So we will get the behind the scenes look in season with Hard Knocks.
Yeah, I love that idea from Hard Knocks because, it may not always be easy to find, interesting content when you follow one team around. When you follow four, you're going to get something interesting. And especially even when you look at the end of the season schedule for the Browns, we know the Steelers have a horrifically insane schedule in the second half of the season. And even the Browns, the last 6 weeks at Denver on a Monday night, they're in Pittsburgh the following week. The next week, they host the Super Bowl champion Chiefs. Then they go to Cincinnati on a Thursday night. They host the Dolphins on Sunday night by the lake on December 29th before ending the season in Baltimore. I mean, that's a very, very difficult end of the season schedule against four teams that were in the playoffs last season and a team that went to AFC championship games the previous 2 seasons. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously the AFC North, definitely the best division in football. All 4 teams finished above 500. Any of these teams, I think, have a real shot of winning this division because all 4 of these teams are incredibly good. And the way the Browns have, grown as an organization to kind of meet that level, I think it kind of shows itself a little bit in Hard Knocks, giving this look to the entire AFC North.
Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we will continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Chris Sims, former NFL quarterback, on the expectations for Deshaun Watson. This from NBC Sports Pro Football Talk.
I don't know what to expect from Deshaun Watson. I certainly know that, it's been 3 years without any consistency of playing, let alone consistency of playing at a high level. It's been all over the place. To your point, the roller coaster metaphor. The last 2 years, it's been like that. So I don't know. And I don't see the same player that we saw with the Houston Texans at all when I go back and watch last year and all of that. That's why we're talking about him right now, is because we're going, wait, you were about to be a superstar. Like a bona fide, when I used to do my rankings there, I was going, damn, Deshaun Watson's going to be in the top 5 or 6 every year for the next 10 years. Like, that's just the way it's going to be. He's the man, right? But, of course, the off-the-field thing happened, and it's totally changed the arc of his career and where he is. Again, this is NFL football. It's not riding a bike. You miss a lot of time. It ain't easy to get back on and just go, oh, okay, I'm awesome at it again. And we're seeing him go through that, let alone he can't stay out there long enough to kind of knock those cobwebs off. And then I think also the public scrutiny is weighing on him. I mean, come on, that answer there. I mean, you see it. Deshaun Watson, it's like he's been scarred by what happened to him off the field.
Tim, I don't know about that. You got to be on the field. The problem is he hasn't been on the field. Now, the suspension, that's on him. Injuries, there's nothing he can do about that.
Yeah, I mean, again, he didn't want to, suffer the rotator cuff strain or the fractured glenoid in the right shoulder or the high ankle sprain. No player wants to get injured, obviously. And again, I said that number, 11 and a quarter games out of a potential 52 that Deshaun Watson could have played over the last 3 seasons. So I think Chris Sims at least made the point that, it's the consistency of playing, it's the consistency of being out there on the field, because the number one ability for any player, no matter how good or whatever they are, is availability. And that just simply hasn't happened for Deshaun Watson for reasons both in and out of his control. So bottom line, like we said before, he's just got to play. And I think the Browns have done a lot in the last couple seasons to give him tools to be successful. It just comes down to him, protecting himself better and trying to take a few of those hits. I mean, quarterbacks are inevitably going to get hit, and they're going to get hit hard. That's just the nature of the game, and there's nothing you can really do about it. But you have to hope that he's done enough to protect himself and that, he gets some positive injury luck. Because let's be honest, I don't know if the Browns could possibly have worse injury luck than they did a year ago. I mean, you just looked at the guys they lost a year ago. I mean, that's once in every couple of years in the entire NFL for one team.
Yeah, if they have that kind of injury history again, that would be incredibly bad luck. All right, these are this is from the Bleacher Report. Browns' biggest weaknesses ahead of training camp. Number one, they say red zone defense. Cleveland allowed opponents to convert 71.4% of their red zone trips into touchdowns, highest rate in the league by a significant margin. Browns must figure out what went wrong there last season. Number two, quarterback. While Watson does have an 8-4 record with the Browns, he's thrown for only 2,217 yards, 14 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 81.7 quarterback ranking. None of those matters number. The 8-4 record's what's important. And number three, tight end depth. This is a position the Browns should have strengthened earlier in the offseason, as the free agent market is down to role players like Jeff Swaim, Tyler Kroft. Don't be surprised if Cleveland looks to bolster position with more players when they become available during the roster cuts. We've already talked about the quarterback thing, and you know what? You can say quarterback wins, losses isn't a stat. That's fine, but it's the most important thing. Do you win with the quarterback? That's all. That's the reason they play. So red zone defense, tight end depth.
Yeah, I mean, that was obviously the big thing about, minicamp in the offseason with the Browns is tightening up that red zone defense. Obviously, we've talked all season about just how good that red zone defense was, but then you look that defense, excuse me, but then you look at that red zone number, 71.4% of times opponents go in the red zone, they score touchdowns. That's way too many. And obviously, it just comes down to football in so many ways comes down to, can you make plays in the red zone on both sides of the football? Can you score when you're inside the 20? Can you get touchdowns instead of field goals? And if you're the defense, can you hold the other team and force them to settle for field goals or possibly even take the football away and hold them to nothing? And that just happened so many times to the Browns. So that's got to be a point of emphasis, especially when you're going up against much better quarterback play kind of across the schedule in 2024. Number 3 with tight end depth. I think that to me, that was still one of the biggest things that came out of the draft. It was kind of surprising that they didn't leave that draft with a tight end, that they made 5 picks and none of them were tight ends. It kind of says maybe that they want to go with more receivers and maybe only 2 or 3 tight ends. I think Jordan Akins still is a solid veteran behind David Njoku. But as we've seen with Kevin Stefanski, if he's going to put a third tight end down and they're in goal line situations, that's probably going to be a guard. That's probably going to be a tackle. I mean, remember, you have one of Jedrick Wills, Jack Conklin, and DeJuan Jones won't start next season. So, I mean, who's to say one of them won't be that third tight end in blocking situations or a fullback or even go out there and potentially in a trick play and catch a pass? So we've seen, in those scenarios that maybe Kevin Stefanski gets creative and puts somebody else at that third tight end spot for blocking, but kind of just says that they want to go more wide open with this offense in 2024.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to take one more time out. Outside the break, we'll hear from Andy Dickerson, the new offensive line coach. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. So new offensive line coach Andy Dickerson met with the media, talked about filling the shoes of Bill Callahan as the best offensive line coach in the NFL for the Browns.
Yeah, I'm a big flip-flop guy to start, so I don't really want to get into Bill's shoes. That's a whole nother world. But again, I've worked for Aaron Cromer, I've worked for Bill, and again, Chrome used to work for Bill, and Drew runs for Bill a million years ago with the Raiders. So there's a lot of carryover. And again, I would watch the Cleveland Browns since Bill's been here to see what schemes and see what they were doing against common opponents or just different ideas. Like Bill's one of the best in the game, and that's. And the good thing is I was brought here to be Andy Dickerson, not to be Bill. And again, like I said, I'm a flip-flop guy, not a shoe guy, so there's no point even trying to slide into those things. But yeah, there's some carryover, and I talk to the guys, and it's like, oh, I remember we used to call it this, and hey, I want to call it this. And they're like, okay, cool, hey, this means this now. So it's just a translation game because, again, you're still getting, it's still a zone, it's still a gap trap. So different techniques, different styles, but they've done a lot of good things here. So I'm learning from these guys different techniques and different things and trying to figure out the best way to incorporate everything.
Tim, the more you hear the guys that they brought in talk, the better you feel. It's they're not trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what stood out with me with what Andy said about himself is that, he's trying to be himself. He's not trying to be Bill Callahan. He's trying to do things kind of in a way that he knows how. And he's had success with the Seahawks the last couple seasons, mentioning, of course, he worked for Bill Callahan. He kind of comes from the Sean McVay trio there. So obviously what he's talking about, some of the stuff with what Bill Callahan brought over is still going to stick. Obviously, you're not completely changing things, but with Andy Dickerson, because like I said, because he's with the McVay tree, you probably bring in a couple different new ideas, and I think that's the theme of these staff changes of the Browns man on offense is you're bringing in guys with slightly different philosophies, slightly different ideas, and you're trying to continue to evolve the offense. And obviously, we know what Bill Callahan did with this offensive line for the last couple of years, made them as good, one of the best offensive lines in all of football. And I certainly think Andy Dickerson, with what he's shown in Seattle, especially developing 2 draft picks into solid starters in Abraham Lucas and Charles Cross, you certainly has plenty of a pedigree to have created the offensive line play that they've had in Seattle and just to bring it over to Cleveland.
So this is from Dog Pound Daily. 3 reasons for optimism, 3 reasons for concern for the 2024 Browns. The 3 reasons for optimism: wide receiver depth is the best we've seen in years. Number 2, backup running backs are superior to what they were in 2023. And number 1, Myles Garrett has a renewed hunger. Yeah, I guess all those are true. The wide receiver, outside of Amari Cooper, I'm concerned without question. And there's an opportunity for somebody to kind of take their career up a notch or two.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's kind of just a matter of showing, what they can bring versus kind of the hype of the preseason and all that stuff. I get all that hype because you really kind of you can't play games till early September. You really can't show what you're capable of. But the fact that, they brought in Jerry Jeudy, they have a second year out Cedric Tillman. And I think Tillman in particular, the phrase is always, you see the biggest growth from year 1 to year 2 because these guys have that full off season in the NFL. They understand what's expected of them. And with Cedric Tillman, it shouldn't be a surprise, that he's popping more in the offseason program. I think if you're the Browns, that's what you want, is him to take a step forward because he had a great training camp, but, unfortunately for him, just didn't translate quite as much as I think he would have liked. And I think the Browns would have liked in 2023. But now, he's had that full off season, understand what he needs to do. And if he continues to progress forward, now you have 3 different guys in Cooper, Jeudy, and Tillman who can play on the perimeter. So all of a sudden it gives you a bunch of different options to play around with.
All right, so same article, 3 reasons for concern. Left tackle is far from solved. I'm not as down on Jedrick Wills as some people. I think he needs to play better. I think he will play better. 2, health across the board. Yeah, that one has to be a concern after last year. And number 1, Deshaun Watson is still a major question mark. We've talked about Watson a lot. If Deshaun Watson plays 14, 15, 16, 17 games, I think it's going to be a really good year for the Browns.
Yeah, I mean, I've said before, I don't think you forget how to play football. Obviously, Chris Sims has forgotten more about football than I have, so he's probably right about that to an extent. But, it's just a matter of him being out there consistently and performing. And you talked about the quarterback win-loss record. He had 5-1. One of those games, obviously, he played that one quarter in Indianapolis. And when you look at the games he's played, the Pittsburgh game, I think, in week 2 is easily the worst. The one game you could definitely say he lost for the Browns. And even at that point, they still had a chance to win that game with a drive in the final minute of that. But then you miss those couple passes in that final drive, and then Pittsburgh is able to win that game. So I just think he gets out the consistency, plays 4, 5, 6, again, just 6, 7 games in a row. I think that's when you start to see him really blossom. Again, we saw that against the Titans. We saw that against the Cardinals. The second half against the Ravens, it's still there. It just comes down to him being out there consistently and for things to slow down, and which will happen the more he's exposed to it, the more he sees out there, and the more he's able to stay on the football field.
Yeah, and left tackle, I get the concern there. Jedrick Wills has to play a little bit better. And it's in there.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before, right before his injury, I thought he was playing some of the best football of his entire career. Obviously, it seemed like the start of the season, he had the struggles he had. It was kind of it seemed to me from this outside perspective that maybe it was a bit of a wake-up call. And from then, he played a lot better. And I think, obviously, this is a contract year for him. If he plays well this year, he's going to get paid, whether it's in Cleveland or somewhere else. So, obviously, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to succeed. And maybe we'll see how he responds to Andy Dickerson. Obviously, Bill Callahan, one of the best offensive line coaches. Sometimes as good as a coach is, sometimes you need that new voice just to bring something different out of you. We'll see what Andy Dickerson does. Again, I talked about how he helped with Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas, the 2 young tackles in Seattle. We'll see if he can do the same thing for Jed Wills and how he recovers from his knee injury and if he could continue what he did prior to his injury. Because like I said, it was pretty good before he was lost for the season.
Tim Bielik, plain dealer, cleveland.com, is always great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff. Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, video analysis, film breakdown of some of the offensive players from Minicamp. Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com straight ahead. Stay with us on Sports4CLE. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. Sports4CLE continues. We continue talking Browns. Browns wrapped up mandatory minicamp last week out in Berea. It means until training camp at the Greenbrier, the guys are on their own, working out and doing different things. We're going to take a video analysis, film breakdown of what went on out at mandatory minicamp. We welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Lance, you were out there pretty much for all of minicamp. So we're going to take a look. Let's start with some of the offensive guys that stood out, things that you noticed. And a good sign, DeJuan Jones out there going through things.
Well, first thing you're going to see is this is just a clip I took of the offensive line. I had a lot of questions about Dickerson and the offensive line. A couple of things impressed me. First thing everybody should know is that, Dickerson comes from that Callahan tree, that Callahan coaching tree. So these guys are very, very detailed in what they do. I was very impressed. Obviously, some of the drills are different, and he has his own spin on things. But I think guys like DeJuan Jones, these young guys, they're going to thrive under Dickerson. He's very energetic. He's very detailed, like I said, and he has lots of ideas in terms of these run schemes that the Browns run. They're a little bit different, but I tell you what, DeJuan Jones, this is just these guys getting warmed up last week. Attention to detail with the left hand, what foot they step with, very Callahan-like. So I think, big thing for me is I always like Callahan always explaining the why to this guy. Why are they blocking the way they do? Dickerson's the same kind of guy. I was very impressed with him. Younger guy, tons of energy. I think he fits what the Browns need up front. And DeJuan Jones is going to spearhead that.
Yeah, and a good sign to see Jones moving around a little bit during minicamp. All right, so the next one, this one's also important. David Njoku and Deshaun Watson. What do you see here?
Well, Deshaun Watson only threw on Tuesday and Thursday. So first and foremost, David Njoku is just a kind of just a consistent now, right? So at practice, he's consistent in his blocking schemes. He's consistent with his routes. He's consistent with his leadership. Now, on Tuesday, the reason this clip is so important to me, on Tuesday, he didn't throw the ball downfield very much, Watson. Thursday, he let it go a little bit. He let it go in some scramble drills. He let it go in individual drills, 7-on-7. So he's starting to let the ball go, starting to be physically where I think he needs to be. I didn't really expect him to get the ball vertically down the field, and he did. And again, Njoku is going to be a key piece of this offense and his flexibility. And him and Deshaun Watson have a very, very good connection. And again, this is kind of him pushing the ball deep, which he did not do on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, he let it rip most of practice.
So again, progression. It isn't, live drills or any of that, but it's better to see them doing that than to not see them doing that is kind of where we're at with Deshaun Watson.
Well, yeah, like all these positions, nothing really counts until the pads go on, right? So my dad used to say it doesn't matter until full pads. So until then, you're looking for progression. A guy like Deshaun Watson coming off an injury. How is he throwing the ball vertically? What is his timing? Does he understand the concepts? Again, I've said it many times about his ability to process information. It's it's at a very high level. So I thought he will not be limited at all, in my opinion, when training camp starts. He's got another full month and a couple more days to get it where he wants it. But I was very impressed on that Thursday of him just stretching the ball out vertically. I thought that defense of the Browns is going to make these guys better on offense. But Njoku is going to be a key part of it, and I think Watson's going to be right where he needs to be come camp.
All right, so another thing that this next clip we're taking a look at, the new guy, Jameis Winston. What do you see here?
Well, a thing I like about Jameis Winston. So when you think about Jameis Winston, this is him getting a vertical down the field to Jerome Ford, and he had a lot of really good throws. But what I think he brings as a backup, again, Jameis comes with like baggage, people say. And, he's growing up, so a lot of that stuff happened when he's a young kid. But I tell you what, he does at practice. He has high energy. He's in and out of reps. He likes being there. He likes to practice. He gives those guys energy. He'll give those guys great energy on day 10 of practice when everybody's tired. His accuracy, his arm strength, all that's there. Jameson's had all-pro type years in the NFL, and I think he's a wonderful backup. Ford is a guy we saw last year catch the ball in the backfield. I thought he had a pretty good couple days. Again, nothing matters without pads, and I understand that. People have said, well, it doesn't matter, and it really doesn't. However, the tempo, the pace, the importance, the things they do, the way they practice, that's how they're going to practice with pads on. I was very impressed with Jameis Winston and his ability to process information, his throws. He's just a guy who likes football. He likes life. He's fun out there, and you can see it when he's out there.
Yeah, the other thing that I have a feeling we're going to see Jerome Ford catching the football a little bit more in this offense as well. This next one, you see Elijah Moore. Take us through what you see here and what you like.
Well, I focused in on Elijah Moore a lot at camp, and he did a really good job. Without Cooper and Judy, which were one of my main questions, he became the primary guy, and I thought he did a great job of running routes. This is on Emerson, where he's going to push vertical on a dig route. And the only way he gets open here is that after he gets off the line of scrimmage, he's got to get vertical, and you're going to see his left arm kind of lean into Emerson right at the end. And that left arm lean can be considered a push-off for some. Me as an offensive guy, we like to call it a lean. He's leaning, and he's almost getting a little push-off there, which creates that separation. Elijah Moore did a great job in all these drills. He was the primary guy from the inside, from the outside. He did a really, really nice job, and this is what he's good at. He's not a gadget guy. He's a full receiver from both inside and out, and I think he's going to have a huge year.
So another one of the guys that is in that mix, Cedric Tillman, and the next clip you have Tillman. Take us through this one.
Well, I really like Tillman again. So Tillman, along with some other guys, Tillman looks physically fit. Now, he looked big last year, but he looks physically fit. He looks fast. You get a little better feel from the receivers. You don't get a lot from the defense and offensive line without pads on. But these receivers and Skelly and these guys were really competitive. Again, this is on Emerson in his zone, third down situation, but he does a really good job. I thought he showed great speed. He's long. I'm always shocked when I stand next to Tillman how big he is. So this is the big kid. I thought he took the next step in terms of his ability to get open, his ability to run routes, simply his confidence in coming out of the huddle, knowing where he's supposed to line up, what route he's supposed to run, what coverage is he seeing. Really good ball. This allows him to pro-turn to the sideline on this hitch. And he makes a great job. And he finishes every drill. He just looks more comfortable. And he's a guy with Judy unproven still, even though they have high expectations, and Cooper having contract issues. Tillman's got to be good. He's got to be good early in camp, so he knows what he's doing in case something happens. But I was very impressed with Tillman. I thought he looked long, he played long, and he played fast. So very impressed. He had a very good offseason, you could tell.
So when you look at that offense, can you see some of the different things that are going on with Ken Dorsey in this offense now, or is it still a little bit too early to tell, do you think?
Well, I think it's too early to tell without pads. However, you do see some of the things. I had a number of plays that I wrote down, especially on Thursday, where they were the same plays they ran last year, but if they do it again, they do it with a lot of window dressing, right? So you're going to get movement, you're going to get motions, you're going to get shifts. You're going to get lots of window dressing and lots of eye candy for those linebackers in secondary. The shifts, the motions, the movements, they all cause those guys to kind of be unsure of what their responsibilities are before the snap. So I don't necessarily think the plays change as much as the pre-snap stuff. I look forward to getting down to Greenbrier and seeing what they do differently in terms of, are there new concepts? But I've told everybody this before. The concepts are overrated. They have good players, and they got to hide what they do with window dressing. And I think Dorsey does a great job of that. His red zone stuff is outstanding, just like Kevin's, and they do a lot of things that are very similar. But you're going to see movement, shifts, and just generalized like hiding things and being very, very diverse in what they do. And you did see that during camp, during minicamp, and I think you'll see more of that once the pads go on.
So there were reports, everybody was going, they were excited, let's leave it at that, about the way Deshaun Watson was throwing the football and the way the ball was coming out of his hand. Those are the kind of things you can tell. Did he look like, quote unquote, Deshaun Watson, if you will, on Thursday?
Well, I was a little interested. So Tuesday he did not. Tuesday, I don't think he threw over 70% on Tuesday. And then Wednesday he didn't practice. So he had practices on Tuesday and Thursday. Now I was wondering if they were going to hold him back on minicamp. Very good sign on Thursday, though. He came out during individual drills, during routes with receivers and tight ends. I showed you that route with Njoku. And then some throws in 7-on-7, even where he scrambled and kept the play alive and let it go. So very impressed with his zip. His fundamentals were very good. I think his ability to move his feet and his footwork in the pocket have improved. And I think they've improved because even on Wednesday, he did a really good job of paying attention in detail and going through all the footwork that he has to go through just without throwing. And I know people got frustrated with that, but I think that's so important. His footwork is very important in the pocket to make sure he gets those automatic completions. And then he did what he does with the improvising and running around. Then you saw him let it go. He threw a couple overthrows and things like that, but that'll come with practice. But yeah, very encouraging on Thursday that his arm is where it needs to be.
Fundamentals are something that fundamentals, and that would be quarterback coach. That's Ken Dorsey. That even more so than an offensive coordinator, that's the reputation Ken Dorsey has throughout the NFL. Really good quarterback coach.
Well, yeah, and a lot of people get caught up on throwing on different platforms and doing all this kind of stuff. As a quarterback, you still got to step, transfer your weight, get your hips proper in the proper alignment. You have to do a lot of different things fundamentally when the pocket is right. The stuff that Deshaun does outside the pocket, that's God-given ability and his natural talent, and that takes over. But fundamentally in the pocket, moving your feet, transferring your weight, having your arm on the right slot, understanding what he's seeing, those are all things that Dorsey's going to help him with. Dorsey played at Miami, the U, and then he played in the NFL. This guy knows what he's talking about, and he's going to relay that to Watson and the rest of these guys throughout camp. And you can see lots of energy on offense, and they're going to have energy because that defense is, I think, even better than last year.
Lance Reisland and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll take some look at the video from the defensive side of the ball Lance was talking about. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back talking Browns. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns with Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Film breakdown, video analysis of the defense. Lance, let's take a look at this first clip you have, the secondary, Greg Newsome. What do you see here?
Man coverage is the back shoulder fade to Cedric Tillman. You're going to see Newsome in man coverage. Now, what's impressive is that when I started, thinking about what we're going to talk about, it's really not players as much as it is units with these guys. So when you talk about the secondary, there's not one guy. Newsome, Ward, Thornhill, Emerson, you name it, Delpit, McLeod. They are absolutely loaded in the secondary, and this is just man coverage. And the reason I like this clip is it shows the progression they've made. Now, I'm a big believer in practice and getting reps at what you do. And last year with Schwartz was the first year that these guys had to play a ton of man coverage. Now they've done that for a year, so they understand how to play man coverage in the field. They understand how to play red zone coverage, man, not giving up ground. So you're going to see Newsome doesn't give up much ground because he knows that the end zone is in the back. So just really impressive, this entire unit. They compete at a high level. This 7-on-7 drill at the end of camp, this was on Thursday. This got pretty heated. And again, Newsome, you saw how elite the secondary was. And one of their weaknesses was red zone, especially against the Texans. So they got to get better down there. They competed and they paid attention, and I thought they did a great job. The secondary can really cover down there in the red zone.
So this next clip also from the secondary, Juan Thornhill, that's a guy that a lot of fans were beaten up about the way he played last year. He was hurt a lot of last year. What do you see here in this drill from Thornhill?
Well, one thing I like about Schwartz is they start off every practice with like a strip drill, a recovery drill, a blitz drill. So this is just Thornhill working on dip and rip. Then he's going to strip the ball, and then he's going to recover. Now, it's a little thing, but he points, and he has a really good time when he's going through drills. And all these guys go through these drills, and they do 3 little groups, and they all move to different. So the DBs will do this, and the linebackers, and even the defensive line. So they all do the same drills, a little circuit every practice. And the thing you see at the secondaries, they're good because they work at it. And I like it because it shows Schwartz. I wanted to show a drill that shows Schwartz consistently working on stripping the ball, getting the ball out, and telling the referees by pointing that you have it. It's a little thing, but sometimes the referees don't know, and you want to tell them we got it. And we used to work this all the time when I was coaching as well. Again, they have great energy. They practice with great desire. Thornhill's a guy who's very vocal. I look forward to seeing him playing a full year healthy, hopefully, because he is the vocal leader of that secondary.
Yeah, and much like I've said with Watson, NFL's an unforgiving. If you're not healthy, they don't care. It's very unforgiving when you're less than 100%. All right, linebacking core. What do you see from this group? And take us through this first clip.
Well, this first clip is just kind of so I'm standing right there on the sidelines most of practice, and I'm kind of in the huddle with them. And the first thing you see stands out of practice. JOK has definitely gotten bigger, and he is an explosive athlete. And, I've done a lot of football in my 40-plus years of football with my father. And watching this guy practice, I know there is just an orange bag, as somebody said to me, and I get all that. But what I want to show you is his movement skills, his ability to stop and start. I think linebacker, Taki was the one position or one person they lost that I thought was a pretty substantial loss. I thought Taki did a great job. This is definitely, JOK is definitely an elite athlete. I expect him to be all-pro this year and a multi-all-pro. His movement skills, his violence, his explosion is about as good as I've seen. And that's one of the things I like to do is watch him practice. And being right down there, it's hard to explain how explosive he is. But he's an elite athlete. Every drill with him is like the last drill. So very impressive group. But JOK leads it for sure.
So the new addition that's a veteran to that linebacking core is Jordan Hicks. And that's a guy that's had 5 straight years of 100-plus tackles. What do you see from Hicks?
So Hicks gives you that, first and foremost, he gives you that leadership. I still think they need a vocal guy in there. Even Walker last year, I thought Walker did a great job too, but this is a vocal leader, and you saw him practice. Now, the thing that I was impressed with is his movement skills. He's been known as kind of a tackle thumper, downhill guy, but I thought he covered very well, even though it was just 7-on-7. And I thought his hips, he could flip his hips. He has great ball skills. He can move in space. He was much more athletic than I thought. Really impressive guy. A veteran guy in there. He gives him that veteran guy on defense. Could be wrong, but I would assume he'll be the green dot guy. He'll be the guy making the calls. He'll be the guy leading the defense. He was in charge, and you knew it. But again, what I like here, it's not anything crazy. It's just movement skills. His ability to get back, high point the football, catch it with his hands. He's a really good athlete, better athlete than I thought. And I thought he was already a good athlete. He was even better than I thought. Really good addition.
All right, so another addition, I think this could be an under-the-radar one. Devin Bush, who was a former first-round pick, hasn't played well. What did you see? Had a really good rookie year and then fell off. What did you see from Bush?
Well, I saw an explosive JOK-type explosion, right? So he's a guy who can stop and start, small area quickness, explosion. Now, when I put this clip up, a lot of people had really negative things to say about Devin Bush in terms of not being able to stay healthy. He doesn't like contact and a bunch of things you don't want to mention when you're on TV. But he's a guy that I thought practiced very well. I thought he had great sideline-to-sideline pursuit. And like you said, he was in the vote. He's kind of in the hunt for Rookie of the Year just a few years ago. He's still young. Once again, I think this is a win-win. Now, if the Browns losing Taki, if Devin Bush can play at the level that I think he can play at, and at the level that I know Bush is going to be really, really solid. I don't think he's going to be an all-pro, but I think he's going to be solid. I think they've even upgraded losing Taki. This guy right here is very, very key for their defense. There are no holes really in this defense. On paper, this is the guy that's got to go out and prove it. And I guarantee you early, you said it early, the NFL is relentless, and the NFL doesn't care. And they're going to attack Devin Bush in the pass game and in the run game, test him and see if he's gotten back to his rookie year, because a lot of talent, but he's really struggled over the last couple years. Again, injuries have had a part of that, though.
All right, so we've looked at the secondary linebackers. Let's go to the defensive line, and these two seem to push each other, Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith.
So going through the defensive line first, so guys I really like, so you got Smith, Garrett, Tomlinson, Shelby Harris, all high-level guys, with Myles Garrett being the player of the year. Then you had Alex Wright, who has physically improved his body. He and McGuire have physically improved their body, so they're going to have big years. I think Quentin Jefferson was a great addition. He's a pass rushing specialist. Michael Hall doesn't have to do much this year except rush the passer. He does that very good. Obaranko is going to be a great third down specialist. They got Ika. Ika's lost a lot of weight. He looks really, really fit. So you're talking 10 deep. Now, this is the drills they do. This new Sazier, their new D-line coach, he is an attention to detail, high-energy guy. I really enjoyed watching him practice. I'm over by myself watching defensive line practice with Ashley Bastock, Dan Lobby, and Mary Kay. And these guys all push each other, but this is a group that's 10 guys deep. This has to be the number one defensive line depth group in the NFL. There are 10 guys that can play on most teams, even in the NFL. This is a high-level group. They do all kinds of drills where they compete with each other. So this is simply who can get their hands on the pad first. And they compete, they have fun, they make all the boring drills really, really fun and enjoyable. It says here, this new D-line coach, he is a no-nonsense, high-detailed, high-energy, consistent energy level. Super impressed with him, his attention to detail. And this defensive line is an impressive group, and I think it's the group that really anchors this outstanding defense.
So let me ask you this: when you look at this group defensively as a whole, and I think you've kind of touched on it, they play a lot more elite quarterbacks this year. They got a break on a couple of them. Can this defense be even better? Do you expect them to be better in year two? I mean, it's kind of a trade-off. It's year two with Jim Schwartz, so you would expect to step forward. There's some challenges because there's Mahomes and there's Lamar twice and there's Joe Burrow who's healthy.
Well, one thing my dad, I always reference my dad. One thing my dad always taught me is to make sure you have answers for your questions. If not, you're just complaining. So I always thought, last year a lot of people complained about what the Texans did to them, and they exposed some of the things that were wrong in the in the red zone, things like that. Those are things that are being addressed by Schwartz and the staff. But if you look at me and you ask me why would they be better? Well, first of all, I'll start with the secondary. The secondary has now played a full year of man coverage. So that means day in, day out, full training camp, 4 or 5 months of the season. Every single day they are working man coverage predominantly, which tells you they're only going to be better at it. They're going to get better in the red zone because they're a year older. The linebacker position. So the linebacker position lost Taki, which I think is a big loss because I like Taki. But now you've added Hicks and you've added Bush. Now, let's assume Bush plays at a somewhat high level. Well, then there's 3 solid linebackers because I think JOK now takes the next step to be an all-pro. So there's another reason they're going to be better. Then the defensive line. They've added Quentin Jefferson and Michael Hall as pass rushing specialists to go along with Obo. Then you have those 4 guys up front. Ika has lost weight. He looks spectacular physically. I think Alex Wright looks physically, along with McGuire, they both look physically better and older and more mature, like they're seniors now in college, right? Go to that analogy. So now you have a group that's 10 deep. So last year they didn't have that depth on the defensive line. Last year they had a linebacker position that's really weak. Last year the secondary was in their first year of man coverage. So yes, I think it's a group that's going to be better. I think it's a group that's going to be substantially better. I think it's a group that can get them deeper in the playoffs because of that depth. They really don't lose a lot when they rotate those guys in on defense. Then all of a sudden, Myles Garrett's playing 40 plus snaps, not 60 plus snaps, and that's important in this pass-happy league that those pass rushers are fresh. So without question, I think the defense is going to be better.
Lance Reisland and I are going to step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break. Some questions that the Browns have to answer after minicamp as we move forward. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back talking Browns. Stay with us.
Come back to Go Forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. So, Lance, you were out at Minicamp. So, after watching Minicamp, wide receiving core, do they have enough there? What are your thoughts?
So it really stood out in the red zone. So as you go through, once again, no pads on, no 11 on 11 live, none of that stuff. So not even really 11 on 11. Most of that was walkthrough. So, but what you saw and where that came out is they don't have Amari Cooper and they don't have Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy didn't practice, undisclosed injury that was not, evidently not a big deal. So during practice, it was good. All those young guys ran great routes. They did a nice job. I just didn't think in the red zone they were able to separate. And in the red zone kind of separates the guys who are elite and the guys who are pros. And remember, if you're a pro, you're better than 99.95% of the world. And those top, less than 1% guys are the guys that can get open in small areas in the red zone. Things that Cooper can do, things that Jerry Jeudy, even though they paid him high money, hasn't been able to do yet. He hasn't done it consistently. So we're all assuming, as guys who have watched film and things like that, I'm assuming Jerry Jeudy, with the coaching he'll get with the Browns and the quarterback he's playing with and the run game, the defense, etc., that he's going to have a great year. But really, the only proven guy they have is Amari Cooper. Now, I think Elijah Moore did a great job in camp. I think he can be a great number 2 or 3. I think Cedric Tillman really stepped up. I even think Michael Woods has improved himself physically. But I'm not sure those are the guys you want to have consistently being your number ones when you're talking about wanting to win a Super Bowl. So Amari Cooper, you got to hope Amari Cooper gets signed. You got to hope that Jerry Jeudy is going to play to the level that you paid him at, and he does have that talent. And it's going to be hard not to be good with the Browns if you just meet your end of the bargain, because they have everything else that you need as a receiver. You're going to get the ball a bunch. They got a great defense, etc. So I think Jerry Jeudy is going to be an elite number 2. That puts Elijah Moore as an elite number 3, and then obviously Amari Cooper is an elite number 1. So then I think they're good. But without those guys and without Jeudy, so Judy's going to have to prove himself, and then they got to find that 4th guy plus Njoku. So a little bit of question mark at that receiver for me. Just not a huge question mark, but they have to get Cooper signed.
So number 2 on the list that we had as questions: how does the offensive tackle shake out, do you think?
After you watch the footwork of DeJuan Jones, I don't know how he doesn't play. And I really like Jack Conklin too. And Jed Wills has all the talent in the world. But I think it's Jed Wills' job to lose or win, however you want to look at it. But it's going to be hard to imagine DeJuan Jones not being on the field. DeJuan Jones is a guy, when you watch him play, even when he practices. Now, you're talking about a field of just immense humans and guys who are just giants, and he makes them all look small out there. And he's a guy who uses his length and uses his athleticism. He's a former basketball player. So my question is, and I don't know, my question that I would ask other people, because this is not really where I don't know, is I like how Dickerson practicing. What's the decision? Because for me, I think Conklin is an all-pro type of guy if he's healthy. If not, then DeJuan Jones is easy there. You're counting on Jed Wills making the turn, counting on Jed Wills becoming the athlete and the left tackle that you see. Now, I will say, as a guy who is lucky enough to be down there during training camp the last 2 years at every single practice, Jed Wills has all the ability you could ever want as a left tackle. He's got all the footwork. He's just got to be more consistent in what he does, improve his body language sometimes. Sometimes he looks uninterested, and that bothers people. But I really like Jed Wills, and I know you need more than 2 NFL tackles. So I don't know if they're going to rotate. I don't know how it's going to work. Obviously, it's a brutal game, but it would be hard-pressed for me to see DeJuan Jones not being a starter at left or right tackle for the next 10 years for the Cleveland Browns.
So the question with DeJuan Jones was run blocking. Is that just technique with him? Because like you said, he is a mammoth guy with really good feet. To me, that says I can just run over the defensive linemen that are in front of me.
Well, he just like Jed Wills, he's not going to be a killer. He's not going to be a guy. He's not going to be a mauler, and he that's just not who he is. Conklin's a little bit of a mauler, and then those guys inside are absolute maulers. Teller, Batoni, and Posick will knock you down every single time. But you don't need those tackles to be absolute maulers. You need them to move your feet. So I think more for him, it was learning the NFL run game and learning. The one thing I always liked about Callahan, and it's something that I cannot wait to watch about Dickerson. Callahan was a why guy. So he would say to Teller, and I remember him saying this in practice, this is why you got to step here. You have to step here because a linebacker will be here. And sure enough, as the play goes along, the linebacker will be where Callahan said it would be. And that's part of his experience, obviously, being in the NFL for decades. But that's kind of what's happening with DeJuan Jones. He's just got to learn the NFL run game and the angles you have to take. And really, he doesn't have to be a killer. He doesn't have to be a guy who knocks everybody down. He'll do that, but he has great feet. So all he's got to do is get that big body where it needs to be. He's got to get his body between he and the running back and then work on being more and more physical. But if he's making the block, it doesn't matter if the guy gets knocked down or not. It's about being where you should be when you should be there. And that's what Callahan, that's why all those guys who played for Callahan were so good. They understood the why. We're going to run power. Here's why we block it the way we do. And that's what made Callahan special. And that's what Dickerson it does as well. And I think it'll be a pretty seamless change with Dickerson, but that's where DeJuan Jones has got to get to, and he will.
All right, before I let you go, the impact of the new kickoff return rules, and how do you think how are the Browns approaching it?
Well, for me, this is the biggest change in football in the last 50 years. Right? This is a big change. People are going to see this is. I've had the opportunity to watch hundreds of XFL kickoffs now, and it's going to be interesting what personnel is out there. So I think teams are going to match personnel like they do on offense and defense. So if a team runs out 10 personnel with a bunch of receivers, the defense runs out a bunch of nickel. I think you're going to see that with these kickoffs teams too. Are they more of a speed team, more of a linebacker-based team? Do they have offensive linemen on there? Will it be more of a punt return? Will it be more of a kick return? I watched some XFL clips where they actually run like a trap, where they're going to trap guys because everybody's man on man. So this is going to become an offensive weapon, and you're going to see some teams are going to put some of their stars back there because of the lack of collision. And then the other thing that I want I've had some debate with people is that this is going to add a bunch of injury to players, and people are like, well, this is why they did it. Well, in the last 15 years, there are no kickoff returns. Everything's been kicked out of the end zone for 15, 20 years now. Now it's going to be a football play. And anytime there's a football play, there's going to be more injuries. So it's going to be interesting who they put out there, what schemes do they run. I expect 2 to 3 kickoff returns in that first NFL week just because this is going to be new for everybody. So this is going to be interesting, and it's going to have a huge impact, especially early.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. Always really good film breakdown, video analysis relative to the Browns and all of football. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.